Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. The next Wasteless World Talks are here with Kevin, Bill, and myself. And we will write on a back of a language which may sound absurd to many. And this is exactly the term we will be talking about, is the word absurd. And I will start with you, Kevin, because today I have you on the top of my screen. So when you heard a minute ago the term absurd, what came first to your mind, please?
The times we're living in.
Nice answer. What about you, Bill?
Yeah, enough said. How can I elaborate on that? Um, Absurd, Galena tells me, is the same in Russian. Absurd, spelled the same way. Um, Absurd. It's an older word, I think. Um, and the noun form of that would be absurdity. Um, it doesn't make any sense. But nowadays, going back to Kevin, there's nothing that's absurd. In fact, if it's absurd, it's going to be the news tomorrow, uh, and we're in a contest to who can be the most
Uh,
absurd.
do you know what will be interesting? What is the opposite? Normal?
Well, not today.
I think that absurd is so closely related to politics that the only opposite of absurd is less absurd.
You know, I was just before we joined, I was on a European Innovation Council event here in Prague. This is why I am streaming from Prague, and it was absurd, really. Uh, the best, I like questions. So when there first came the question, any questions, my hand shoot up to the sky. And it was at the moment when the highest rank AIC officer spoke, CO, or I don't know what is his title. It doesn't matter. And it was all about money and funding and so on. How business need them to get funded and so on. And I asked him, isn't it better uh, to value the results instead of a process? And I spoke about Industry 5.0 and so on. And he starts stuttering immediately. It was, and the crazy part, there has been some doers in the room, but very few. All the others has been related to the business European Commission invented to laundry money, I will say. Uh, and then there was lunch, and he was standing there looking at me, fearing that I will come to him to his table. And so I did not. But then I left earlier to be able to join this at this event, and uh, it was crazy because I went to him and I thanked him for his answer, and he was so confused that I think he will not. He will check double whether I am in the event next time.
He'll ask for questions and exclude Michael Rada, except for.
And the great part, they cannot so simply fire me from the room. They can take me out if it's online. But when I was sitting there with about 100 other people, it's not so easy to take me out. So it was fun.
Uh, so what? But what do we do about that? We're sitting around joking and laughing, but what do you do about it?
I
You
think
know,
at the moment,
yes,
the
Kevin.
problem is that absurd has moved from being funny to being grotesque, and that the absurdity is no longer funny. It's something much more unpleasant.
Uh, I will call it different. Absurd become normal. And normality become absurd for some people. You know, the event was held at so-called Technology Agency of Czech Republic. It's a government funded organization. And we have to register in advance. And there was 20% more people than chairs. That was the start. So some people have to stand. The second part, we stand a
But you had
queue.
to register so they knew how many were coming.
Yes, yes, that's the crazy part about it, you know. And then the second, we stand for lunch. And it was quite a long queue. And somebody came out and says, no meat anymore. And I said, do you wonder they cannot order the right number of chairs? So I can imagine the report. Czechs become vegetarian. Majority of participants don't eat any meat. And the queue start to laugh. That was so funny. It's the absurdity in a real life, really. I was there 2 hours ago. But what we can do, generally, I think we can stop to pay attention. You know, if you look at DJ Trump, Elon Musk, whoever of the big guys, they need attention. Let's stop. Let's don't pay attention.
That's very
I don't
good.
care about them. So I think only so will the absurdity become absurdity again and not normal stage.
You're right. They do demand attention, and to keep them from the attention. And when we do give them attention, it is to laugh at the absurdity. But I'm watching much less news these days. I've changed my news sources. I care about local news much more than I care about national or international news to a point, because local news to me makes sense. I understand why, um, a lot more than the national and international news. So maybe redirecting our attention.
Uh, Kevin, you work for a quite famous organization and you work on their plans. Do you think that in such an organization is place for absurdity?
I hope so. I think it's the only way to judge a politician is by, by the absurd things they do, and not just politicians, but the political organizations. Our leaders, they are becoming more and more absurd. They're less capable, less intellectual, and the danger is that the decisions become more and more absurd. So, but I think that the nice thing about absurdity is that it can be charming, it can be funny. It's it's a kind of it is a form of humor. Some countries appreciate more than others, but beyond that, it's dangerous. Like you say, you can ignore absurdity up to a point, but the problem is that we also need to hold it to account. And if you let them get away with one thing, they'll get away with 10 other things.
I think it's you mentioned the very important point. The people must be accountable. And unfortunately, in my country, if you become politician, you have immunity. It's it's such a crazy working environment. When you enter a company, you become immunity. So no matter what you do, you are not accountable for. Why should you not be crazy? Why should you not be really absurd in your decision making? You are not accountable at all. There are very few politicians and leaders who become accountable. But usually they left already, they live in another country or whatever. So their life is fine.
Do you think the president of the European Commission is unelected? Absolutely no accountability at all.
And even the elected leaders are not leaders. They just call themselves. You are not a leader if you need to be elected. This is my perspective. You are leader when you lead someone who join you without whatever election. You don't need the election. I don't like the term leader. I don't like the term Führer. Is the same. It's just as let's say historic annotation. We use different words in Czech Republic, like vedoucí, but vedoucí, for example, is very close to leader. Vest is lead, so it's. But we have other terms as well. But I don't think one of my guests in talks about nothing spoke to be guide. That leader should be guide. That's not a bad idea. And as you have been speaking, Kevin, about absurdity, I was thinking, let's measure it, let's make absurdity leather or whatever. But that will pay more attention to the people. They will even be more crazy if something like that happen, like Fortune 500. So we will have absurdity 500, but the people would like to become there. There has been Oscars, and if I'm not wrong, there exists anti-prize in the film industry, raspberries, something like that. Rotten Tomato, I don't know how it's called, but there exists something like the negative price in the film making industry.
Yeah, I think the problem is in Europe, there's that our foreign minister will win it every single time. Kaya Kallas, she will win the Golden Clown Shoe for the next 10 years or however long she's in power. You couldn't actually hire a more professional clown than her.
You know what is interesting? There has been, I think, I know that actor was a U.S. president as well, Ronald Reagan at the time. But I think that there was a president of Estonia, was a comedian, and if I'm not wrong, then the president of Ukraine was an actor. Even I think he was a stand-up comedian. I'm not sure. What is interesting, Arnold Schwarzenegger, of course, he was not a president, he cannot be, but he was a governor. It looks to me, when I look at these people, it looks to me that the actors are better president than those who are growing from the politic environment. Our president, the most known Czech president by foreigner, is Václav Havel. He is not politician. He was not politician. He was an actor. No, he was a screenwriter or writer. He was author, but he was not an politician. And still, everybody remembers him. That's so interesting. Like turning the roles in a society, but they must withstand the pressure. That's the difficulty.
I think that if you look at modern American politics and history, Ronald Reagan was definitely one of the better, perhaps the best president of the second half of the 20th century. But when he was first elected, there was, it was just this feeling, how can an actor become a president? But I think we need more of them.
What do
Well,
you think?
they called him the great communicator because you could you just related to him talking. It was so easy to to agree with him, um, even though some of his policies trickle down. For example, anybody with a kindergarten education should have seen through that one.
Uh, I think it's quite interesting. You named the term communicator, and I think this is the difference, or this is the key to absurdity. Because the people who deliver absurd decision making or decisions or whatever, they do not communicate. They deliver. It's a monologue. And there around them there is a lot of other people who say, yes, you are great and the best, and they laugh at them no matter how stupid the decision is. But none of those people generally communicate. So we need more communicators. It's interesting. Hmm. Mark is missing in the round.
Yeah. One thing that I really liked about Ronald Reagan is his jokes. When he stands up at a microphone and tells jokes, they're mostly Russian jokes, but he is extremely funny. He is a great storyteller, Ronald Reagan, or he was.
I don't know. At the time, I was too young to understand. And even I didn't speak English probably by that time. But I remember the time of Gorbachev, of course. So Ronald Reagan and Gorbachev. I was in Moscow at the time, so for a month.
Michael, look on YouTube, Ronald Reagan's Gorbachev chauffeur joke. It's well worthwhile listening to.
I will watch for sure.
Michael, how did your lunchtime crowd uh, deal with this absurdity?
Not at all, because I have to cancel the event on during the lunchtime. I knew I will be in the conference, so we will have it next week, but
Okay,
we will not have the term of today.
okay.
And
Maybe we will
interestingly,
touch it.
I don't think nature goes in much for absurdity. I think nature is far too serious and far too proper.
That's interesting. We celebrate with Jane 10 month of our relationship yesterday. And the week before, I gave her some orchideas. Orchids, is it correct name in English? Yes,
Orchid, the
orchids,
flowers.
orchids. Yeah, and the orchids has in the middle so funny shapes. Is in the part. It looks like a human. It looks like a bird. It looks like many things. Different types of orchids has a different type of this. And it's look, if you look in a very small, I have a quite a good micro whatever on my mobile, and it's look really funny. So I took in her orchids, there has been like a man or a dwarf sitting and waiting, and I put it on a Facebook group with a question, what it is waiting for. In few hours, hundreds of answers. It's on toilet and waiting for Godot, and it was so funny. It was so absurd, but at the same time, many people write, I never thought nature is so beautiful. It can pretend. I think nature pretend, but there is no space for absurdity. You are absolutely right.
I suspect that humans pretend. Nature is.
Hmm. I was thinking about the camouflage as a pretending because maybe the association with Czech language is slightly damaging the view of mine own. Uh, because I can pretend to be a snake when I am lying on the ground and moving like a snake. So nature in this way pretends a predator to be a flower. But that's probably not the term pretending, is it? It's camouflage?
Imitating,
Imitating.
imitation.
Imitating. Okay, okay. Then I do understand what you said, Bill. Yeah, and I
You
agree.
know, I think when you first said the word, the first thought that I had was, it's an old word, right? But 100 years ago, was there absurdity? Even though we had the word, the concept of absurdity or absurd 100 years ago is very different from, I think, the concept of absurd today. Maybe because to some extent we are living in absurdity, and 100 years ago, what do you think? Has has the reality of absurdity changed over time?
Yeah, because it used to be, maybe 30 years ago, it was an everyday put down to say to somebody, don't be absurd.
Right, right. And if somebody says that is absurd, most people would then get into a discussion, right? Well, why do you think that's absurd? Because of this reality and that fact and so on. So from that point of view, it's not absurd. There we have a discussion. We don't have discussions today to the same degree.
Uh, I
We
just
we
I just did
blame
some,
each other.
I just did something which I probably never did during the discussion. I checked the origin of the term absurd, and it's right. The term absurd originates from Latin, which we expected, absurdus, meaning, and just now I do not know the expression, so you may explain it to me, out of tune or discordant.
Yeah, it's a music reference. Out
Ah,
of tune,
okay.
right? Out of tune. Ooh, that was a flat note or
Okay, okay,
whatever.
I do understand. Which figuratively and evolve to mean silly, irrational, or senseless, and so on and so on. Aha. So absurd was, it has a very different meaning at the time.
It's out of tune.
Out
Whereas
of
today,
tune.
absurd is it's nuts.
Yeah.
That is just so far off the spectrum.
Yeah, because you can start with satire, and then comes absurdity, and then comes God knows what. I think it is grotesqueness after that. And
Yes.
The question is there a limit really to absurdity? I think it is developing together with the society. Few years ago, it was absurd to think there will be a war in Europe. And there is a war today, and it's become normal. Looking at the humanoid robots. All producer of the robot says they will not be used for war. Today, drones, the digitalized or the robots on 4 legs or even 2 legs are killing people in battles. They are watching for people. I wrong parked or didn't pay my parking fee, I don't know, in Prague, and I receive a letter, notice, and in the header, this notice was issued by a robot, and there was his name, XY, whatever, and he penalized me.
I don't know if you heard that AI is being used to select targets in Tehran.
Yeah.
And there's a famous park in Tehran called Police Park, a proper park with trees and lakes and stuff like that. So the AI, of course, selected that because it said police. So that park has been destroyed.
I just read before we started, I just read about a woman in Massachusetts who was in jail for 6 months, I think, because AI identified wrongly her face as a bank robber, but she was in another state, but she was never in the state. And still she was jailed for 6 months, I think. I'm not sure if it's true, but this message show up just a few minutes before we started.
I know there have been arrests in the US with AI wrongly identifying people. But it's interesting then that we believe so strongly in the ability of AI that we refuse to believe our own senses and we rely upon the AI to make the judgment for us.
And that's
So
exactly
I'm
the
teaching my grandchildren about the fallibility of AI and even how they make up facts called hallucinating. Uh, and I think that this is a course that everybody should be required to take so that we can understand the, they are becoming they are becoming increasingly powerful. Parking tickets today, what's happening tomorrow that the AI and the robots will control. So we need to understand the robots that we have made. That's one of the excuse me. That's one of the problems with inventions. It takes so long to figure out the ethics and the governance issues behind an invention. So the car was invented, but it was decades before speed limits were made. The first cell phone, excuse me, the first cell phone shipped in the year 2007. We are just now, 20 years later, coming to regulate how old someone needs to be on a screen, or right? It takes so long, and so AI is 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 very new, very new. A lot of people didn't know what it was 5 years ago. So how long is it going to be before we fully understand the ethics, the guardrails, the watermarks, the governance that need to be with AI?
I have to correct your statement, Bill. AI, the term was introduced in 1956. I think Massachusetts University, if I'm not wrong. It was on one university. This was the term of naming first the AI as a whatever. There
Yes.
was some specification.
Well, that was not the only misstatement that I made, but it's the only one that you caught.
Yes.
But I think it's interesting with technology. In the old days, an invention came about because we had a problem which needed a solution. And then there's this wonderful story that can't remember his name. It's an American scientist. He invented the laser. And he said, look, I can do this. I can't even remember what laser stands for, but somehow you compress the light into a single beam. And he said, look, I've invented this. I've called it a laser. And everyone thought this was wonderful. And it was declared the first human invention which didn't solve any problem. But we think now, today, how many things involve a laser? It's in so much technology. And the telephone companies, the mobile companies who first, they used SMS as an internal communication system. They didn't think there was any need for it out in the real world with customers. And I think it's the same with AI. The people who are developing AI, they haven't got a clue how it should be used, how it will be used by humans for human benefit. So of course they're saying it could do this and this and this, but it could be in 10 years' time we actually use it for that and that and that. And it'll be interesting to see how AI adapts to real human needs rather than perceived AI capabilities.
You mentioned SMS. I do remember the time when so-called SMS gates, you can install it on a computer and send, if you have the mobile phone numbers, you can send a SMS message to many. which was impossible before. At the time, I was working for a refrigeration company, which generally do not serve the end users, but the technicians who take care about them. And there was one item which all of them need. This is a the liquid which goes into the air conditioning and so on. And I came with the idea that when the temperature will step above, let's say, 25 degrees Celsius, that everyone will receive a message. We have 5% discount on this refrigerator. Do you know what was the success rate? Bill, you will love it. 98%.
Wow.
Because everybody needs it, and it was too hot. And this 2%, I have learned later that these did not have the phone at the time. They worked on the fixed line.
So it is by disqualification 100%.
It was very interesting. Never repeat it again, because it was such a unique opportunity in a unique time, which I can use it. Then came the smartphones and so on, so it was not used anymore, but it was quite interesting. Free of charge. And I think one of the absurdity or the absurdity of today's life is that we are getting so much information that we are not able to process it and ask even for more. And we do it deliberately. When I was riding in a car with a boy who's 15, and usually he has his earphones on, but this time not. And I listened to what he did on the mobile. Every 5 seconds, new content. He cannot stand for more than 5 seconds. Unbelievable. How we really dive into the absurdity of not being able to concentrate on one thing.
That's
But
so sad.
in a way, it's interesting because, is this a defect in design of the human mind? Or is there a need, an evolutionary need for us to be able to do that?
I don't think it's an evolutionary need. It's something which is pushed by a limited group of people with the only aim to enslave and to not enslave, to make addictions. I just read, before we started, I just read a short article about obesity. And there was a doctor speaking, the people need to move more, eat better, and take pills. It was one of five. And he said, yeah, when you start once, you need to take them all your life, making you addictive to the pills. That's unbelievable. Not to cure you, not to give you the solution. No, the patient become just a simple money back.
But that's not that surprising
No,
because medicine, pharmaceutical companies, they're in the business to make profit, not to cure you.
and that's the absurdity of life.
And that's the absurdity.
Nature will
It's a,
give you, nature will
but
give
the,
you cure.
it, it,
Sorry, guys, I dropped out for a second. I think there must be something with the internet here, but I'm back again.
Yeah, that was, we hardly noticed. You just moved on the screen.
Yeah, I have an absurd internet connection.
I'm just now looking, we have 5 minutes left.
But I think
so
one interesting thing about absurdity is that it is a one-way street. It doesn't get less absurd. Everything seems to get more absurd.
that's just what I was going to ask. What will the absurdity level be in 5 years or 10 years or 50 years? It will be more? Is that possible?
Yes, Kevin?
No, I was going to say that there has to come a point where we say enough is there is no limit to absurdity. It will just become more and more weird, more and more grotesque. And as long as people are making money out of it and grifting off it, there's no there's no force to stop it
Kevin, you're
unless
freezing up.
we stop it.
There exists something.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you, but freezing seconds. But please do not relog because we have only 3 minutes left or so. There is I think when you travel by air, there is a point of no return, something like that, that you will not have fuel or whatever. It's connected to something, I don't know. And I just wonder if there is something, if we already reached this point in absurdity. I don't know how exactly this point is called, sorry. Something like that.
Yeah, no, that's very understandable. So, so we will or are now developing defenses against the rising tide of absurdity in our society. I told you some of my defenses uh, earlier. I don't watch as much news. I don't, there are some people, I cannot look at them on the news. I cannot listen to them. As a defense, I block them. And what will that be like in 10 years?
Very interesting question. I think we never get into such a deep or in such a deep thought in our discussion in 4 years. And I never expected it will come with the term absurdity, to be honest. But it's
And is the
interesting.
absurdity just the political absurdity? Are there other absurdities?
I think there are many others, but the political absurdity is like the role model. You know, few years ago, not a single president can be a pedophile. Today, it is. So why not the others? You know, our prime minister, he has DJ Trump as a role model. He does exactly the same steps in exactly the same results. Just we are a small country in the middle of Europe, so he does not have this power. But when you look at it, it's like mirroring or monkey whatever movement according to some.
Monkey see, monkey do.
Yeah, exactly. And we have 1 minute left. So it was a great discussion again. Great discussion. And I hope there will be Mark again with us next week. So have a nice time. Free of waste and wasting in all its forms. Stay safe. Be free. Be human. And let's ignore absurdity up to the level that absurdity will be absurd again. And see you next week. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.